month.
Right, yeah.
I was gonna go with this model.
Well, then you go camping in it.
I could put the dogs in it, actually.
Good morning. It's Tuesday, May 14th, and time for the Board of County Commissioners meeting of Indian River County to begin. We're going to begin with a moment of silent reflection for our first responders, and this will be followed by an invocation by Pastor Jeremy Redbun of the First United Methodist Church, and followed then by the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Commissioner Susan Adams. Please rise.
Let us pray. Oh God, we'd like to begin our day with gratitude. We'd like to say thank you for this day, and we'd like to thank you for the United States of America, Lord, this great country that you've given us to live in. And we'd like to thank you even more specifically for our community, Lord. To think that people actually leave their homes and come here because it's so beautiful and because it's such a joy to be here. So God, thank you that we get to actually live here. And we'd like to ask also your blessings, Lord. Your blessings on our community. God, would you bless our county commissioners? We ask, God, that you would be with them in a very tangible way today, that you'd lead and guide them. Lord, we thank you for them, that you've given them a heart to serve this community. We'd like to pray over each person of goodwill who's here today, Lord. We know that there are so many stories represented here and so many items coming before this commission, Lord. We lift them up to you for your wisdom, God, for your guidance. We know that all these things matter to people and that people matter to you, God, and so with confidence we pray for the blessing of your wisdom and guidance in your holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me for the pledge. I
Pledge
pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I'd like to announce for the public what is for the Board of County Commissioners a special event. The Indian River County Sheriff's Office has sought to schedule an executive session as allowed under Florida Statutes 447.605 with the board to discuss an article that involves a significant financial impact on the agency's budget. This meeting is exempt from FS 286.011, which deals with the sunshine laws. It's one of the very rare occasions that county commissioners can get together outside of the public eye and have a discussion about something which we may take a vote on. This meeting, the present at the executive session for the Sheriff's Office will be Under Sheriff James Harpering. In addition to the board, it is requested that County Administrator Jason E. Brown be present at the executive session. This is going to be at a time certain at 9:30, May 28th, 2019, and it is to discuss the resolution of the impasse related to the Indian River County Sheriff's Offices and the IUPA Collective Bargaining Agreement. So again, this will not be open to the public, one of the rare times. We'll also announce this next week, but we just want the public to be aware that this is happening. And with that, we'll move on to the additions and deletions to the agenda. I've been asked, I had a request to move 13B pretrial services up to right after 5C, if that's okay with the board. Any other additions or deletions?
Move as amended.
Second.
We have a motion to approve as amended by Commissioner Fleischer, seconded by Commissioner Zork. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes 5-0. Moving on now to proclamations and presentations. The first is a presentation of a proclamation designated the month of May 2019 as Mental Health Awareness Month. Commissioner Adams is going to present this to a large crowd who we invite up to the podium now. Commissioner Adams.
Thank you. Everyone makes their way. It is my pleasure to read a proclamation designating the month of May 2019 as Mental Health Awareness Month. Whereas mental health is part of overall health, and whereas mental health helps to sustain an individual's thought processes, relationships, productivity, and ability to adapt to change or face adversity, and whereas mental illness adversely affects those abilities. And whereas 1 in 4 adults experiences mental health problems in any given year, and such problems can contribute to onset of mental illness. And whereas 1 in 17 adults lives with mental illness, such as major depression, bipolar disorder, or schizophrenia. And whereas approximately 1/2 of chronic mental illness begins by the age of 14 and 3/4 by age 24. And whereas long delays, sometimes decades, often occur between the time symptoms first appear and when individuals get help. And whereas early identification and treatment can make a profound difference in successful management of mental illness and recovery. And whereas it is important to maintain mental health and learn the symptoms of mental illness in order to get help when it is needed. And whereas every citizen and community can make a difference in helping end the silence and stigma that for too long has surrounded mental illness and discouraged people from getting help. And whereas public education and civic activities can encourage mental health and help improve the lives of individuals and families affected by mental illness. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners, Indian River County, Florida, that the month of May 2019 be designated as Mental Health Awareness Month in Indian River County, Florida, in order to increase public understanding of the importance of mental health and to promote identification and treatment of mental illness. Adopted this 14th day of May 2019 and signed by all 5 county commissioners. Welcome, and thank you guys for being here to shed some light on this very interesting topic that faces our community. Would you like to say some things about what you guys are doing in this for this month?
Thank you very much for recognizing this important topic, and we are just so fortunate in this community to have such a wide breadth of providers here, as you can see all standing here, and we are very fortunate that anybody in this community that needs access to mental health services can get that access, and we are very fortunate because not every community can say that. So thank you.
Who all is being represented here? Because I know there is a lot of groups, and I think this is a good opportunity to kind of...
Right. Well, I am Brett Hall with the Mental Health Collaborative.
Julianne Price, Department of Health.
Sharon Packard, School District of Indian River County.
Gina Palladino, University of Florida.
Ann Posey, Cleveland Clinic, Behavioral Health Center.
Eric Korhammer, Public Defender's Office.
Vicki Soule, Treasure Coast Community Health.
Jeannie Shepherd, Mental Health Association in Indian River County.
Tiara Weethy with Suncoast Mental Health Center.
George Shopman, New Horizons.
Thank you.
Erica Malesio, Legacy Behavioral Health Center.
Thank you. Well, thank you all for being here, and thank you for what you're doing in our community.
So the one question is, where would be the first place someone should go if they need help?
Well, they can certainly call any of the providers in town, but they could call the McCabe Connection Center, because what we do is we work with the providers, and we get them to the right provider the first time, so they don't have to make a bunch of phone calls. They make one phone call to us, we do all the work for them, we get them into where they need to be.
Okay, great, perfect.
And since 2007 at the Mental Health Association in Indian River County, we've been doing walk-in mental health screenings. Those are free for any Indian River County residents. We work with all ages. We also provide free consultations for someone who's concerned about a loved one, and we'll see anyone that just arrives when we're open. We charge a nominal fee for people that live in St. Lucie or Brevard County, but we'll see them that same day whether they make payment or not.
And where would they be able to find you?
We're at 820 37th Place. We're across from Cleveland Clinic, Indian River Hospital, the little road behind Perkins, and we're the last building on the left.
Okay, great, thank you.
And then I was going to say, in a life-threatening emergency, Behavioral Health Center is a Baker Act receiving facility, and if someone needs inpatient admission, they can present to the emergency department, and we'll help them out there.
Awesome, great.
There seems to be more.
Before we close, in honor of the proclamation, we're putting together a mental health awareness brown bag lecture with the college. It will be tomorrow at the Kite Center for Emerging Technologies in Fort Pierce from 11 to 1. Feel free to join us. We are out of seats to reserve, but we do have 50 left for last-minute attendees. So feel free to come and learn more about what you can do to help not only the community, but your own mental health. Thank you.
Thank you.
I did.
Thank you.
Oh, you do?
I
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thought I was going to see Nick. Thank you. See you always. Thank you. Everybody's got to run the gauntlet, right?
You bet, thank you.
Good to see you. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Hi, Peter.
You didn't speak up when you were
Yes.
back there. You were hiding in the background.
Tremendous support, though.
Okay, on three. Back up just a little. 1, 2, 3. We'll get one more. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
We'll now have the presentation of a proclamation designating the month of May 2019 as Foster Care Awareness Month. Commissioner Zork will present this to Karen Toole. Commissioner Zork.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chairman. We have a few others here with this morning, Jamie Bond, Place of Hope. And actually, after I read it, if you all would say which agency that you're representing, and we have extra copies, so everybody will have one. And then there's a couple announcements after you folks have a chance to speak. This is a proclamation designated the month of May 2019 as Foster Care Awareness Month. Whereas in 1988, President Reagan issued the first presidential proclamation that established May as National Foster Care Month. And whereas in 2003, the state of Florida implemented community-based care to save time and financial resources and improve effectiveness in reaching foster care goals and outcomes. And whereas the family, serving as the primary source of love, identity, self-esteem, and support, is the very foundation of our Indian River County community. And whereas in Indian River County, there are typically more than 140 children in foster care being provided with a safe, secure, and stable home by compassionate, nurturing foster family. And whereas foster families in Indian River County have opened their homes and hearts to children of families in crisis, playing a vital role in helping families heal, reconnect, and find permanency. And whereas there is an ongoing need for more foster care homes in Indian River County to help launch children into a successful adulthood. And whereas the community should be made aware of these needs of children, as well as the enduring commitment and contribution of foster parents. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners, Indian River County, Florida, does hereby proclaim the month of May 2019 as Foster Care Awareness Month, and urges all citizens to volunteer their times, talent, and energy on behalf of foster children, foster parents, and professional staff engaging in this critical endeavor. Adopted this 14th day of May 2019, signed by all 5 county commissioners. Good morning, and thank you all for being here today. Would you like to share a few words, and then I have 2 announcements to add at the end for you.
Of course. Thank you so much for having us today. It's so important that foster care be a forefront of our community, a conversation, because these are our children. Unfortunately, currently we only have about 28 foster beds in Indian River County. We have the bulk of our children not living here. So when they are removed, they're placed in Martin or Port St. Lucie, somewhere across the state, and that just really makes it difficult for a child who loses all of their connections. So we really would love everyone. It may not be your season to be a foster parent, but it could be the person sitting next to you at church or at Publix or someone that you know from a civic organization, if everyone has the ability to recruit, and we would request that this morning. So we thank you for calling attention to this most valuable resource we have in our community. And we're very blessed to have 4 child-placing agencies that work with us to try to recruit here in the community, and those folks are here, so I'll let them introduce themselves.
I'm Tricia Curl with Camelot Community Care.
I'm Tim Putman with 4Kids Treasure Coast.
Good morning, I'm Andrea Hagabuck with Mount Bethel Human Services.
And good morning, I'm Jamie Bond with Place of Hope.
Thank you so much for having us.
And thank you, and I'd like to bring up the two announcements. In the topic of foster care, myself partnering with Place of Hope, there's going to be a foster care informational program tonight from 6 to 7 at the Hampton Inn downtown Vero Beach. They can reach my office or call me 633-2004 if you'd like more information on that. And to say thank you to all the foster care families in the region, regardless of which agency that they're with. There's going to be hosted a family fun day on Saturday, June 1st from 1 to 3, and that's open to any families who have adopted, fostered, played any role in that process. We'd like to say thank you to them, and that will be Saturday, June 1st at Vero Bowl, and we're looking forward to thanking those families on that special day. Thank you very much, and we have proclamations, I believe, for each of you.
To your right.
Move to your right.
Keep moving. There we go.
2, 3 feet. Yeah.
On 3. 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
And we will now have the presentation of a proclamation designating the week of May 18th through May 24th, 2019 as National Safe Boating Week. Commissioner O'Brien will present this to Franz Ibers of the USCG Auxiliary Flotilla 56. Good morning, gentlemen. Commissioner O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. Welcome, gentlemen. This is a proclamation designating the week of May 18 through 24, 2019 as National Safe Boating Week. And I think it also should be the official beginning of summer, Mr. Chairman, just saying. Whereas, for nearly 100 million Americans, boating continues to be a popular recreational activity. From coast to coast and everywhere in between, people are taking to the water and enjoying time together boating, sailing, paddling, and fishing. During National Safe Boating Week, the U.S. Coast Guard and its federal, state, and local safe boating partners encourage all boaters to explore and enjoy America's beautiful waters responsibly. And whereas safe boating begins with preparation, the Coast Guard estimates that human error accounts for 70% of all boating accidents, and that life jackets could prevent nearly 85% of boating fatalities. Through basic boating safety procedures, carrying life-saving emergency distress and communications equipment, wearing life jackets, attending safe boating courses, participating in free boat safety checks, and staying sober when navigating, we can help ensure boaters on America's coastal, inland, and offshore waters stay safe throughout the season. And whereas National Safe Boating Week is observed to bring attention to important life-saving tips for recreational boaters so that they can have a safer, more fun experience out on the water throughout the year. And whereas, on average, 650 people die each year in boating-related accidents in the United States. 76% of these fatalities caused by drowning. And whereas the vast majority of these accidents are caused by human error or poor judgment and not by the boat, equipment, or environmental factors. And whereas a significant number of boaters who lose their lives by drowning each year would be alive today had they worn their life jackets. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the Board of County Commissioners, Indian River County, Florida, hereby supports the goals of the Safe Boating Campaign and designates May 18 through 24, 2019 as National Safe Boating Week and the start of the year-round effort to promote safe boating. We urge all those who boat to practice safe boating habits
and wear a life jacket at all times while boating. Adopted this 14th day of May, 2019, and signed and endorsed by all 5 county commissioners. Gentlemen, tell us a little bit about Safe Boating Week.
Thank you very much. And let me first of all thank the commission for this proclamation. It helps us bring forward the idea that safe boating is a responsibility for everyone out on the water. We're the United States Coast Guard Auxiliary Flotilla 5-6. We've been in Vero Beach since March of 1942. We are the oldest flotilla on the east coast of Florida. The originally started out with people coming up from Port Pierce and forming our flotilla up here in Vero Beach. Our primary mission in the Coast Guard Auxiliary is recreation boating safety. We augment the active duty United States Coast Guard. We are all volunteers. Last year we put in over 7,000 hours of work on this idea for recreational boating safety, and this is what we do. We offer safe boating classes here in Vero Beach and in Sebastian. We'll do a safe boating class anywhere if anybody wants one. We do vessel exams. We check your boat for safety before you go out on the water. We check your equipment that you're going out with. We do, well, right now it escapes me all the things that we do. We do active support of the Coast Guard down in Fort Pierce. We have people down there that act as food service officers. We have people down there that are watchstanders. When you're out on the water, some of the times when you call the Coast Guard for assistance, you're going to be talking to an auxiliarist. We've been around, we like what we do, and we're going to be around for a long time. And we appreciate your help in activities like this, giving the proclamations to us, gives us a chance to get out and let the people know that we are there, and we'll continue to be there.
And then I know that you guys are usually at the some of the boat ramps around the county at times to do the free boat safety check, and so that's at no charge, and you guys just come up and ask them, hey, you want us to give you a check, and they you make sure they got all the equipment working right and have the right equipment and all that, correct?
Yes, sir.
Very good. All right.
We'll be there all through the summer at various dates. So if you see us, stop by, say hi, let us check your boat, and get you out there.
Awesome. Thank you, gentlemen, very much. Come on up.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thanks for all your volunteer efforts.
Thank you.
Thanks for all your efforts. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming.
Come back to your right a little bit, guys. Come this way a little.
Otherwise, Scott is going to have to.
There you go. Perfect.
Franz didn't mention it, but this Friday is Wear Your Life Jacket to Work Day, so if anybody wants to. Okay, on 3. 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3. Thank you all.
Is that this Friday coming or a week? This Friday.
17th, yeah.
We'll come back. Come by and check your life jacket.
Very good.
We'll now move to the approval of the minutes. We've got the minutes of the regular meeting of March 26th, April 2nd, and April 9th.
Mr. Chairman, move all 3.
We have a motion from Commissioner Flesher, second by Commissioner O'Brien. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. There's only one information.
Mr. Chairman, I think you had wanted to move item 13B up at this time.
As a matter of fact, I did. Thank you. So we're going to move to Attorney's Matters, 13B, Pretrial Services up, and I'll pass it over to Mr. Reingold.
Thank you very much. St. Lucie County has a pretrial program which provides a number of different services for those who are awaiting trial. These include GPS monitoring, curfew and house arrest compliance, establishing exclusionary zones, and drug and alcohol testing. St. Lucie County is providing this service to the 2 other counties within the 19th Judicial Circuit. Martin County began the program in October of 2018. It is estimated that Martin County Sheriff's Office would save $1 million per year based upon the number of beds used per day at a cost of $88 per bed. This does not include the savings that they should experience from not having to handle the medical expenses for those folks who are no longer in the custody. On April 24, 2019, the Public Safety Coordinating Council heard a presentation from Roy Hudson, who runs the program for St. Lucie County. At the meeting, Chief Judge Metzger, Judge Cox, and Judge Morgan all expressed support for the program. The PSCC unanimously supported the program and authorized the county attorney to gather additional information and present the matter to the Board of County Commissioners. County Attorney's Office recommends that the board authorize the county attorney to work with the sheriff and Roy Hudson from St. Lucie County and gather more information and a more definitive cost estimate for what it would cost for St. Lucie County or for anyone else to operate a program on behalf of Indian River County. I'll tell you, and I also want to thank Roy Hudson for being here today, and also Chief Metzger, who's also joined us this morning. If you have any additional questions for them, just available for additional questions, and so I turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Rangel. Mr. Rangel, I do have a question. The first one that comes to mind is that this is about the operations of the Sheriff's Department. Is the sheriff on board with this?
Well, I see the sheriff in the audience, so I can let him speak for himself, but I can say at the Public Safety Coordinating Council meeting, Selby Strickland from the Sheriff's Office and the correctional officer had said that they were supportive of this program.
Morning, Mr. Chairman.
Morning.
And Commissioners. Obviously, I've been in the loop with this. Typically, the pretrial releases in the metro areas where it has seemed to work well. It is a trend that, of course, is coming this way. We've had discussions over the years. I would recommend staff's recommendation that we continue the dialogue. There's some things that have to be worked out, like the housing of the person, obviously the dollars. Please keep in mind that currently we have about 45 inmates too many. I don't want you to get the idea that when we launch, and I have an idea that we're going to launch pretrial release, that our population is going to go down significantly and we are going to save a lot of dollars. The composition of our inmates versus Martin County, for example, varies a little bit. Most of our inmates bond out. This is, in essence, in lieu of that. In other words, at first appearance, the judge may declare that this person is eligible for pretrial release, which we are all for that. Indications are that about 10%, 8 to 10% would violate the terms and conditions of the pretrial release and come back. If that is violated, the Sheriff's Office will be responsible for retrieving these folks from the community and bringing them back. So staff's recommendation is fine. I do think we have to work out some things. Obviously, we have some upcoming construction at the courthouse. Just the infrastructure and the logistics of where we're going to house this person or persons, I think is a good idea, and I think that we can work together and move this forward.
I'll have one other question for you since you're there, Sheriff. Now, I take it you'll be able to pay for this out of your budget. Well, I mean, no, it's not funny. I mean, it's the backup says that savings would be, part of the savings would be $1 million for a program which in St. Lucie County was $250,000. So, I mean, that indicates that you ought to get almost immediate savings of some amount, and that in a short period of time, your savings would be significant.
That's why we have to have continued.
Okay, well, okay.
I don't think it's going to be $1 million. In fact, I don't think it's going to be anywhere close to $1 million. Because remember, the composition of our inmate population, Indian River County versus Martin and St. Lucie, our inmates tend to bond out versus not being able to. So that's an idea. Now, could there be one of these particular inmates that this works out well for that has a medical condition? Absolutely. But essentially, at first glance, we're looking at easy money. That's $1.09, for example, a meal. That's 3 meals a day. The housing, you've got 29 different pod locations, so you're still going to have your manpower there as well. So I think we work through it and crunch the numbers and see where that comes. But I feel confident that we'll be able to have a pretrial release program in this community. Now, St. Lucie's model is different than Martin's model, where Martin's model, the Sheriff's Office is involved in, whereas St. Lucie's, it's the county involved in. So essentially, the Sheriff's Office would be working hand in hand with Mr. Hudson, which I go back 30 years with. We're just going to have to work all that out.
which is good. I just want to make it clear because it's not clear from the staff report. The staff report indicated that the starting point of savings would be $1 million, or could be $1 million. And that's the takeaway anybody would get from reading that staff report. So before we go down a road, I just want to bring some of these points out. I think that, again, based just on this 2-page staff report, that there shouldn't be any additional tax implications for Indian River County taxpayers. And in that, that's good. So for me, that's two things. One, I certainly don't want to see any increased taxes from this, especially given the initial report we have on it. And second, I don't want us involved in your operations.
Right.
So, okay, and that's extremely important because this board, at least since I've been here, has been very clear that while we have some budgetary authority over the Sheriff's Department, we don't want to inject ourselves into your operations. So as we structure it, I'd ask that it be structured so it's between the Sheriff's Department and the other agencies involved, but not the Board of County Commissioners. Because again, I'm not asking you to work on roads, and I don't want you to ask me to work on corrections or law enforcement. Anybody else?
Chairman?
Yes.
Yes. Couple things, Sheriff. I know last year when we did the budget cycle versus what you had asked for, and we talked then the anticipated cost if we had to open up that next wing of the jail. Right. In a way, this may keep us from having to fully fund the opening of that, which is
Yes, sir.
a few $1 million a year. So in our case, it may be not having to have additional expenses of opening a wing versus reducing the population a significant amount. And I get your point that even if we were 100 inmates under capacity, you still have to fully staff it regardless if you're 1 under or 100 under, you have the same operating cost. That doesn't change your operating cost side. In some of the discussions I've had with some parties involved with this, the concept of maybe year 1 of this program is if it's funded, have St. Lucie run it, get the bugs out of it till we look at bringing it in-house as a way to kind of slowly step into the process of it. I don't know what your thoughts might be on that.
Yeah, that's one of the models that's in existence now. I do want to add that I think when Martin County launched it, I think it's way too early to put a dollar savings amount on it. You know, where the $1 million number came from is I presume, a forecast, but I don't think it's realized dollars yet.
And also one other thing, Mr. Chairman, currently the drug court has about 100 participants that are not housed in your facility, that they're in their program. Those you can multiply a daily savings on, but again, if you're staying under your capacity, your fixed cost don't necessarily drop incrementally, but if we open up a new cell, that's where you get into the big ticket dollars. So I look at it as more of saving future dollars versus, there may be some savings in the interim, but if it keeps us from opening another wing, to me, that's where the larger savings would be.
I agree with you.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions for the Sheriff? Commissioner O'Brien.
Actually, not for the Sheriff, but if Mr. Hudson and Judge Metzger could answer a question for me, please. Mr. Hudson, I guess I'll just start with you. Martin County signed the interlocal agreement back in September of 2018. So the program would be in place for roughly about 6 months now. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And it may be too early to put a dollar figure on any savings, but do you know like about how many people per month are utilizing this at Martin County?
I can tell you that at this point, when I sat down with Martin County, I worked up figures, which I would do with anybody, and just said my prediction was, due to a formula that I used, that we would be 30 to 35 people at any given time in any week on the program. Once the program got up and running, it takes a few months for the judges to get used to having the tool to use and so forth. And we were slow the first couple months as I predicted, but right now we're running 30 to 35 a week in the program.
In Martin County?
In Martin County. Yes, sir. I'm running probably 180 in St. Lucie County every week.
Okay, very good. And then Judge Metzger, I guess one of the other benefits of this program is additional public safety, because I guess you could have a domestic violence charge or something, and that person may bond out, but then you really can't follow them. Whereas under this program with the GPS tracking, you can then track that person to make sure he or she doesn't go back to the victim. Is that correct? Do you see
Correct.
that?
Correct. As judges, we look at the pretrial program as giving us another tool to use or consider for pretrial release. As we know, folks who are charged with crimes are entitled to pretrial release unless it's life felony or capital offense with conditions that are reasonable. So when we have the pretrial program available, it gives us more tools to address the two issues as a judge that I'm very concerned about when I consider pretrial release. The first is safety to the community, and the second is, are they going to be coming back for court? This safety issue is what you're addressing, and I believe, based upon my involvement in using the program, that the program does a good job in addressing that. Why is that? Because in domestic violence or those types of situations, we can have the GPS put on, and there's a cone, if you will, of safety where the folks who are monitoring this 24/7 know if there's a breach, and they're on it right away. When we have a monetary bond and we put no contact with the alleged victim, and we don't have pretrial involved, there's no way to, quite frankly, enforce that. The accountability piece is not there. So that's a big concern.
Okay, so, and again, just to kind of reiterate, it's not just any potential savings of dollars, it's also the additional public safety as part of the program.
Correct. The accountability is there. Again, in any other condition that I have, whether it be no contact, we may have other conditions as well, house arrest. When we have pretrial available, they are enforcing it, they are monitoring it, they are reporting to the court. I don't have that with a monetary bond. So it is a big piece to ensure public safety when someone is out awaiting trial on their charge.
Okay. And then, Ray, I guess you have enough hardware, I guess, to monitor all the GPS. You know, you said you're doing 180 in St. Lucie, and
90 of those are on GPS probably, and the other half are not on GPS at this time. But yes, we have a contract with the company, and as soon as we feel the need, we have them bring more. We have GPS units located in Okeechobee and Martin and St. Lucie County right now.
okay, and so you have capacity to add more if we go down that road?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. I think that's all, Mr. Chairman. I kind of agree with what the sheriff has said. I think we need to continue the discussions and have Mr. Hudson and the sheriff get together and look at this, but I agree with what Commissioner Zork said, that a lot of this might be saving future dollars and maybe not so much direct reduction because of our population, but I think the potential future savings and then the public safety aspect of this would make it worthwhile to further the discussion and look into doing it. So, but thank you.
Commissioner Fletcher.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And again, I was present at the meeting, and it was very rewarding to hear the judges respond, because they had the tools. Chief Justice, I know you commented that you have the tools elsewhere, and it's working. And I think we have to focus in on that we're the only county that does not participate in this type of program in our area. As a matter of fact, we're probably one of 10 in the entire state that do not participate. And the benefits are incredible. It was very interesting to hear Roy state very clearly he's not selling himself. He's promoting a product, a tool, a piece of equipment that the judges will have that can provide a cost-saving measure. You know, I don't think we should focus in on it's important to be good stewards of the taxpayer dollar and be concerned about the cost savings, but look at the benefit, the human benefit that we now will be able to give to, if we go forward, to give to the judges, regardless of whether it's contracted through Roy, with the sheriff, with the county. It's taxpayer dollars that's being invested in the betterment of our county. And I do believe that if you want to look at face value, Sheriff what do we have? You said we're over about 45 at about $91 a day.
And remember, that's, I think, 490 last night, but that's not opening the e-building. So.
And once you do that, that's going to trip a very costly trigger as well. And in addition there, we have, be with caution here, we probably have a good handful of inmates that are on specific medications and medical dependencies that are extremely costly to our citizens.
Absolutely.
And that's within your budget, and it's taxpayer dollar that we have to give that nod each and every year. So, you know, if we get bogged down about where it's going to come from, I think there's an automatic indirect savings, but more importantly is it's going to give us an opportunity to change lives, give the judges the leverage to change lives, and whether they're monitored by an independent source or by a team that's housed within the courthouse or within the sheriff's office. Thank you, Sheriff, for that offer, by the way. Regardless, I don't think we should get stuck in the mud about where the funding's coming from. If you're talking about what I think, Roy, the estimate was about $200,000 to do a startup.
Again, I have to.
That was a rough. We're not look.
Martin County, and again, them providing certain equipment and so forth, is about $250,000. And again, I would have to do the assessment and sit down and go over equipment needs and so forth to come up with the figure. Then that's why I caution everybody, don't get stuck on what Martin County's paid, because it could be less, could be more. It just depends on the stats once I run them and come up with the formula.
And you know, and once again, we're Sheriff, extra 45, 91, we can come up to $1 million real quick this year. So I'm not concerned about the exact dollar saved. I'm concerned about another tool that we can make this county a better place, a safer place, and yeah, save some bucks in between, because those specific medical applications. There's one particular, costs about $5,000 a month for one.
4 or 5 of those right now.
4 or 5 of those. That's $25,000 a month. That's going to this specific medical need, and I think that we can change that a little bit.
That doesn't mean that the ones we already house are eligible for PTR, so that would be on the front end.
No, but there might be some on the outside waiting to be guests and not having the opportunity to bond out so quickly. So, and then we're on the hook. And we appreciate everything you've done in the world of pharmacology with the Sheriff's Office, but I think we need to go another step further. So, with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move to direct the county attorney to move forward and discuss this with St. Lucie and the Sheriff's Office and bring this back.
There's a motion from Commissioner Fletcher, second by Commissioner Zork, but I believe Mr. Brown wanted to say something.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think first I just have a question for Mr. Hudson. I know Martin County's just started doing this, and it's early to get the numbers, but my understanding and my recollection, now a lot of this comes from what I've read in the paper or heard secondhand, so I'm open to correction if it's not true. But my understanding was part of the impetus for St. Lucie County to start this program several years ago was the cost savings. So I just want to get confirmation of whether that was one of the benefits, and have you realized those benefits in St. Lucie County? Have you seen cost savings over the time that's been implemented?
Yes, sir, we have. St. Lucie County originally got involved in this simply because of our jail population, being that, right currently today we are housing probably 1,300, a little over 1,300 a day. And we got sued many years ago, about a dozen years ago, for jail overcrowding. We had a study come in and it performed, and one of the recommendations was a pretrial program come about, and the pretrial program was born out of that study. And This past year, my pretrial program just for St. Lucie County, my overall expenditure is probably about $900,000, and we saved $6.5 million in bed nights, not to count the other medical stuff. So if you back out the $1 million, we'll round it up, you still got a $5.5 million savings to taxpayers in St. Lucie County last year.
All right, thank you. And I understand there are other societal benefits of a pretrial program and understand that. I would just hope that we could realize some savings. And I just want to make sure we get good information to the board to make a decision. You know, maybe we don't save $1 million like Martin County, but it would sure, I'd hate for us to spend an extra $250,000 and never see any savings. I don't see how that would be doing a good job for the taxpayers of Indian River County. And when we have things that are there's an argument that we're going to save dollars and we're not taking an opportunity to try and ensure that we save those dollars, I think we owe that to the taxpayers. I know we don't want to get too overly concerned with what's in what bucket, but, and maybe it's appropriate for the county to have the contract. I don't know that. I have a question if it's appropriate for the sheriff's office to have the contract. We don't. The county doesn't enter contracts for food services at the jail, for instance, and I don't think we should get into that. So I kind of have a question where that line is drawn and where does this go in the budget? It seems like the most appropriate is in the sheriff's office. I'll tell you, if it's in the county's budget, I need more involvement in the process. I haven't had a whole lot of involvement in the process yet, and we have an opportunity to do that. But I think we need to have clarity on where this goes and whose budget, whose contract. And I think the board's motion does give us that direction, but I think those are concerns that I have as I sit here today that I think we need to work through before we bring another product back to the board. Thank you.
This point.
And Jason, the only thing I would add to that is when they do have those discussions, you know, I think the sheriff had a good point. You've got so much, you know, fixed cost. So when we talk about if it's $85 a bed day or 91 or whatever that number is, I think what we really want to look at is the incremental cost per inmate. So like food, medical, things like that, because we'll still have to run the jail. We'll still have the electric bill to pay. Even if we take 45 people out, we still have all those correctional officers that we're paying and things like that. And I think those costs are all wrapped into when you say $88 a day or something. So I don't think those are the savings. Now, out of that 88, let's just say, you know, maybe it's 28 a day is additional costs to have an inmate above your fixed cost. So when you work on that, I'd like to see those numbers broken out. And I think that would define where savings are really coming from. You know, that incremental cost, you know, when somebody comes in, how much additional is that costing above your overhead fixed costs?
I'd like to add as well, these types of programs save in other areas. And what other areas am I talking about? Failure to appears. So if someone fails to appear to court, what happens? A warrant is issued for an arrest, and when we need the sheriff's office to effectuate that, find the person and then bring them in. These programs reduce the failure to appear rate. In addition, because of the supervision. In addition, these programs also reduce additional charges when someone's out on bond and then there's another charge because of that supervision piece that is in place. And the last thing I'd like to say, as a judge, I'm always concerned about the monetary factor, and I brought up this example before. I could have two people who have the exact same charge. Hypothetically, it's a possession, let's say, of cocaine charge. And as a judge, I may look at it and set a bond of, let's say, $2,500 to $5,000. Individual A, who was arrested, has a financial ability to post that bond within an hour of being brought over to the jail. Individual B is unemployed and doesn't have the financial means to bond out. So here we are. You think you're being fair because they have the same charge and they have the same bond. pretrial program we have found allows the judge to have the tool to address the person who does not have the financial means to bond out, but also ensure the public that they're safe because we have the monitoring, and ensure that the person is going to be returning to court. So it addresses that particular issue that I think is concerning to a community. We should never have the financial means as an impediment to allow someone out on pretrial with protections.
Mr. Chairman, I have one question of the sheriff while he's still here. Yes, sir. If we did have to open the next wing, what's the annual operating cost? Because we know if you took those 100 people out of drug court and put them back in your place, if that wasn't there, that would...
Or mental health court, correct.
Right, or mental health.
We've done studies on that, between 8 and 9 additional deputies to open up to ECHO. Now remember, e-building is what we call direct supervision, and that is, I think most of you have been there to visit, and that is a situation where, depending on their classification, can he or she go into the what we call the e-building. It's not typical what you would think is a jail. This is a big room, octagon with a desk for the deputy that's there, and the inmates essentially in bunk beds in a wide open area. So that all depends on the classification as well. But to answer your question, we can have those amount of numbers, the personnel numbers, dollars, and I can report back to you with that. But that is expensive. That's why we have been hesitant on opening it.
Right.
For the last couple of years, because our population, as we know, our population went down when the economy improved, quite frank with you, and it's still less than it has been in many years. Many years ago, 10 years ago, we were around 650. Now we can hold 717, and I think last night was 490. But it's just about managing those inmates and saving dollars is what we've been doing in recent years. And as mentioned before, staff recommendation is to continue to work together, and I'm sure the judge and Mr. Hudson and myself we can work something out. We just got to work the bugs out. And as Mr. Brown said, we want to make sure that we take our time and get this right. So I'm sure it's going to work out.
No other questions from the commissioners? I'll ask if there's anybody from the public who'd like to speak on this matter. If there not, we have a motion from Commissioner Flesher, second by Commissioner Zork. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Aye. Passes 4-1. Solari dissenting. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming today.
And I just want to thank Judge Metzger and Roy Hudson for coming down this morning and joining us for the discussion. So thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Move on to item 7, information items. I'll just pull the single item there, which is a proclamation honoring Catherine Daniel on her retirement from the Public Works Facilities Management Division after 28 years of service, and I thank Ms. Daniels for her service. Moving on to the consent agenda. Would anybody like to pull anything from the consent agenda? There being none, I'll ask if there's anybody from the public who would like to pull anything from the consent agenda for discussion. There being none, I'd be happy to get a motion one way or the other on the consent agenda.
Second.
Was that a motion from Commissioner Fletcher? And a second by Commissioner O'Brien. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. We now move on to county administrative matters. Indian River County 2019 State Legislative Final Report. Mr. Brown.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. With all apologies to the board, I'm going to try and do a poor impersonation of Kate from last year. So it might not reach that same standard, so my apologies early on. Basically, wanted to provide a legislative report on the 2019 legislative session, which concluded May 4th. The legislature adopted a $91.1 billion budget that is headed to the governor for his approval. I will point out that is the one thing that the legislature is required to do each year, which is pass a budget. However, they are overachievers, and so about 3,500 bills were filed, and of those, only 197 passed. So first, I'd like to start out by thanking our local delegation, Senator Mayfield and Representative Grahl, for their efforts to fight for our priorities. I see we have Margaret Mitchell from Senator Mayfield's office and Ed Berenberg from Representative Grahl's office here, so thank you for being here. As we know, Senator Mayfield's a tenacious advocate for our community and the issues that face it, particularly the Indian River Lagoon. And Representative Grawl, we all know, is a well-principled legislator who really takes her time to dig in and understand the issues and the impact of the legislation. So we were fortunate to have those two in Tallahassee representing the citizens. So I'd like to thank the lobby team. Kate, also Dylan, has been an integral part in our legislative efforts as well. So I'm providing an update on our priorities and appropriations and the bills as they sit here today. Some of the bills have not been signed by the governor, so they could be vetoed. And as you know, the governor has a line item veto authority on the budget, so any of our appropriations could potentially be vetoed. If one of those things happens, we'll update you. So just run through our priorities. The Indian River Lagoon, no big water bill was passed this year. There was a lot of effort put forth on that, but nothing successful occurred there. A bit disappointing, I think. I will say that the legislature appropriated $682 million for water projects, which by my rough math is about 0.75% of the budget, and that is more than had been spent for about the last 5 years. We're averaging about 0.4% of the budget, so that is an increase in funding. So that did happen. The county, two of our projects are water quality projects. One's a TMDL type project, and one is a septic to sewer project. Our number two was high-speed rail. There was no legislation on that, but the county has been working with FDOT. We did go up and meet with DOT in Tallahassee, and since then have had a meeting with DOT to go over our safety concerns over the crossings. We've got the 32 crossings in Indian River County. DOT staff did come out a couple weeks ago and meet with us in the field and go over each of those crossings, and we are working with them to provide our full comments on the latest plans for those crossings, and we are working with them to ask that they continue to fulfill their mandate as identified in the OPAGA study, and we seem to be we had some cooperation from them on that coming down here. Next was biosolids. Unfortunately, no biosolids bill passed. We had lots of hard work from both of our legislators on that issue, but a biosolids bill did not pass. What did pass was House Bill 829, which deals with attorney's fees, and we don't like this bill overall, I would say, and Dylan can talk more about that if he wants to. It regards assignment of attorney's fees if there is a legislation, if there's litigation, about some of the land use laws that a municipality or a county may have. However, we did have some language inserted that provides protection to our biosolids moratorium. It will allow us to be able to extend that moratorium. We plan to bring an item back before the board in June to move forward on that. Number 4 was recycling. There was a bill that addressed some of the recycling issues. And that was House Bill 771, and it would have required cities and counties to handle, among other things, contamination of recyclables in our contracts with our waste haulers. This bill was vetoed by the governor. It may not have been thought of as the recycling legislation. It was the plastic straw ban that the governor banned, I guess, by vetoing. So it vetoed it also, with that, went with the recycling. Ford Trade Zone, I had no legislation on this year. We are working with St. Lucie County as they go through the process with the Department of Commerce to get their foreign trade zone extended to Indian River County. We've been in contact with St. Lucie County on that, and that is moving forward. They've had a little bit of a hold up on that as there's been some staff turnover there at the U.S. Department of Commerce. Beach restoration. A bill passed that made some changes to the DEP ranking system, and there was language that had been suggested in previous years and this year, I think, where $50 million would be set aside as a recurring revenue for beach restoration. That was not included in the final legislation. However, $40 million in recurring funds were provided, along with about $9 million in non-recurring dollars, and those non-recurring dollars are where our Sector 5 beach project was funded. Texting while driving. Number 7, that did pass, so that's something that had been going through the process for the last couple of years, and so glad to announce that legislation passed this year. Short-term vacation rentals, that bill failed again. We think we've been successful in holding off that legislation. We do anticipate this will be back next year. The short-term vacation rental advocates, Airbnb, and those entities that we believe will move forward. SHIP and the Sadowski housing, there was no legislation requiring full funding of the trust fund. Some pretty good news, I'd say, overall. The total housing trust fund allocation increased from about $123 million last year to $200 million this year. Now full funding is over $300 million. But I do want to point out that $115 million was set aside for Hurricane Michael communities to help them in their recovery. And the end result is the SHIP allocation went from about $43 million to about $46 million. So we anticipate a slight increase in SHIP dollars. I will say the overall housing trust fund, the governor proposed $352 million, the Senate proposed $332 million, the House proposed $123 million in total. One thing is that's the total housing trust fund, which includes sale and some other things. One thing I find troubling is that the House's proposal for SHIP was actually zero. So in a time when we're facing affordable housing challenges across the state, that seems at odds with that. But the Senate and the House and the governor ended up compromising on $200 million. Next are appropriations. As mentioned, Sector 5, we did receive funding. I do want to point out a correction. We had requested $1.9 million, and there was a misunderstanding on my part. I thought we got the 1.9. What happened was the money that funded our project were leftover funds from prior years, and they funded our request from last year was $1.7 million before some design changes and things increased the cost. So we're getting 1.7 instead of the 1.9. I've been told by our lobby team that if we so desire, we could request the additional $200,000 again next year, but we did get the bulk of the money there, and that is a difference. We had 4 appropriations requests. Maybe to paraphrase Meatloaf, 3 out of 4 ain't bad, so we got 3 of those, and not the 4th. We also received money from Moorhen Marsh, which, as you know, will be a TMDL project, cleaning water from the North Relief Canal before it enters the Indian River Lagoon. North Sebastian Septic Sewer, we received $500,000, and this one was considered a long shot, but we did receive that. Jones Pier, we had requested $120,000 for that project, and that was not funded. Again, I'd like to thank Senator Mayfield and Representative Groff for all their work in helping that. There were some other legislation that did pass. Most notably, there was House Bill 7103 on property development. It provides a shot clock on development orders and things like that. It's maybe not our favorite legislation, but definitely something we can live with. 911 requires text to 911 capabilities by January 1, 2022. House Bill 5, the local tax referenda item, that did pass, however, not with the 2/3 majority requirement, so we're quite happy with that. It does require that those referenda be held at a general election, which I think is good policy, and we don't have a problem with that. And that is it. I'm available if you have any questions, hopefully not too difficult questions.
Any questions for Mr. Brown?
Actually,
Mr. O'Brien.
this is kind of more for either maybe Margaret or Ed can help me. On the straw ban veto by the governor, apparently he supplied a letter going along with his veto explaining why he did it. And what I'm hearing is it apparently was a very compelling case for local government. So I don't know if Ed or Margaret, if you all could get a copy of that letter, I'd love to see it, and that'd be good to have. And if that is kind of where the governor leans, I think that's a huge thing for us and our efforts on home rule. And if we have a strong advocate sitting in the governor's chair, I think that bodes well for future legislative sessions. So if you all could get a copy of that letter, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
And Commissioner O'Brien, let me follow up on that. Do you think it would be the right thing to do to write a short letter to the governor thanking him for that in his position on home rule?
I think why don't we look at the letter he wrote, and then I would be glad to have you send a letter back to the governor saying thank you for supporting local government or whatever would be an appropriate response when we see his letter.
So as long as that's consensus of the board, I'll go ahead and do that on behalf of the board.
Absolutely, that'd be wonderful,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Want to just make a comment on two items. One, under the foreign trade zone. Even though the process is not completely finished yet with our partnership with St. Lucie County, I believe we do have local business can now apply for their subzone number and start the process and be running that simultaneously. And I think that paperwork information will go to Bill Shute, one of our staff members in planning. I've had two businesses that have expressed an interest to do kind of the early start, and which is good news. And secondarily, just to kind of quantify the lack of fully funding the SHIP program, so that's about $1.5 million we did not get that we can reinvest in housing home ownership in the community. And based on average of the assistance that we provide, that's 50 families that we are not able to provide housing ownership opportunities to, and that's this year, and it was 50 last year, and it was 50 the year before. So literally hundreds of families have been denied that opportunity through the assistance that this program's supposed to fund. And I don't know what else we can do to be more proactive, but I know we have the same speaker next year who just, for some reason, dislikes helping those who need housing the most. And I don't know how we get through to him. It's got to be locally driven, but he will be there next year. And so we can probably expect a similar outcome. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other comments, Vice Commission? There being none, thank you very much, Mr. Brown. There's nothing to vote on in that matter. We will now move to departmental matters, general services, staff report, and update to the Indian River County Board of County Commissioners on pickleball. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Kevin Kerwin, your Indian River County Parks and Conservation Resources Director. I know you all have the staff report. I'd like to read some highlights real quick, and then I'll be here to answer any questions that you may have. During the March 26th meeting, I think we all remember that there was a large group of pickleballers here, along with Miss Mary Colansino, representing Pickleball University. They made a request to the commission to move forward some funding for the development of pickleball courts at Dick Bird Park. Just currently, the pickleball courts that are available in Indian River County, there are 6 courts that are used 3 days a week inside the gymnasium at the Intergenerational Center, 12 courts at Pocahontas Park in the city of Vero Beach, 2 blended line courts at Schumann Drive Park in Sebastian. And just as a side note, the Pickleball University was given a blessing by the city of Vero Beach Council to raise $180,000 to upgrade the courts at Pocahontas Park, excuse me. There's a lot of P's there. Just to be clear to the commission, the reprogramming of the funds that's stated in the staff report would only take place during the actual capital improvement element process, and that would be brought forward to you in December. And then additionally, the excuse me, the $450,000 contemplated in the capital improvement element was not just for pickleball courts, but for other improvements to the park, such as walkways, parking, maintenance, and other park amenities.
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
Just, Kevin, how many, the rough plan for down there at Dick Bird Park, about how many courts do you think we'll be able to get in place there?
So, Commissioner, I mean, that's a moving target, and I want to be right up front with you. When you measure it out, what's available now without impacting any other courts, like the 2 basketball courts that are there and the tennis courts, you could probably get in 8. However, if you were to look at the park in its entirety, and I'm talking about not the lacrosse fields or the parking lot or anything in the conservation area, the Scrub J area, there is a potential to reconfigure that area. You could maybe get 12 courts, but with those courts, you also need walkways, shade, drinking fountains, other park amenities. I mean, a lot of what you see in the development of a park is not apparent. I mean, there would be a need to provide for drainage there, since you are putting in hard surfaces. But I would say 12, but I don't want to go out on a limb and commit to that. I think the most prudent thing to do would be to go ahead, get somebody on board along with staff and along with input from the user groups, do a really good look at what can be done there that fits within our budget and also fits within the needs of all the pickleball players, knowing that you're not going to build, you're not going to build a church for Easter Sunday. Even though you wish you could, you're not going to build to that extreme capacity. You're going to build to what can take and where you meet your average capacity needs.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Fletcher?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kevin, you mentioned that Pickleball University was given the blessing or ordained by the city of Vero Beach to do a little fundraising. And,
yes, you're absolutely right, Commissioner.
And that's in nature of like a GoFundMe process there. And could you update us if you have any knowledge on how that's working out for the city project?
It's going good. I mean, if you go on the GoFundMe site, Mary and her team have really been pushing it, and I think they were at, as of this morning, $129,000 and change. I mean, that's pretty good.
It
goes a long way.
Strong element of support there, I guess. The county, we need to bestow them a blessing of that type as well.
I'll give you that blessing right now, Commissioner, and that's for you to do. But I think that the more that the users actually come along with us, the better the facility will be, and that we'll be able to address all the needs throughout our park system.
I was quite impressed at the amount of response in such a short time. We know that pickleball is the number one growing sport because it goes across the board for individuals, and it's actually become a tourist attraction, and also strong local recreation. But most certainly, I was very impressed to see the type of numbers that were coming in so rapidly.
Agreed.
Any other questions? Commissioner Adams?
Yes, question. So it sounds like there's a lot of growth in the pickleball community going on throughout the county in Sebastian, and now the proposed project with Vero Beach, and now we're talking about new courts in the county. So it seems like the infrastructure for pickleball is growing rapidly in the county. My concern is if we do this, is this going to hopscotch any projects we have pending? Because I know there is a wealth of need for recreational infrastructure within the community for other sports, and there is a fine line balance that we need to make sure we're walking between providing enough for everybody and a wealth of sports opportunities, not just one particularly, because I know we have needs for baseball, soccer, there's always needs for lacrosse and other things. So can you speak to that a little bit, please?
Yes, Madam Vice Chair, that's an excellent point. I mean, our needs are varied. The intent for the administration and the hard work that we need to do is to see if we can do this without bumping any other project or any other need in any of our active, passive, or conservation area out of the way. So, so noted, and we hear you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, thank you very much. I'll ask if there's anybody from the audience who wishes to comment on this. Come on up, ma'am, and if you would, your name and address for the record.
I'm Mary Colasino, the president of Pickleball University, and I'm here on twofold. I want to thank staff again for all their hard work, our meeting. Thank you ahead of time if you approve this going forward. As Commissioner Fletcher had said, We have $129,000 already raised in 5 weeks. That already takes care of our phase 1, which is 6 courts that were badly needed to be done, pulled out, redone completely, and now we're into almost finishing phase 2. And phase 3 then would be lights. So you can definitely see the passion that pickleball has and the people behind it to be able to raise $129,000 in 5 weeks. That's substantial. Having said that, what staff is proposing would alleviate a lot of the congestion at Pocahontas Park. And to be honest with you, it's the only game in town. It's the only public park with the exception of a small park up in Sebastian. So what staff is suggesting would help alleviate a lot of that. The one thing I would caution you about moving forward is that when this facility does come out into playbook or whatever you want to call it, that parking really is taken a look at, because that's the one thing we're finding at Pocahontas Park right now with the 12 courts is that parking is really in dire need in a lot of times, and especially during tournaments. And I know if you're going to have this wonderful facility being built at South Park that you're going to want to do tournaments as well. So just a little heads up. And again, I just wanted to thank all the hard work the staff has put into this, and thank you as well.
Thank you very much.
I have a question.
Are you for, ma'am? And we have a
Can you
question.
tell me how much the city of Vero Beach is contributing to the renovations of the Pocahontas Park? You guys are contributing a significant amount. What is the city of Vero Beach doing?
Nothing, basically. Having said that, we have had a really good working relationship with the Park and Rec, but monetarily, nothing. And it flows in the same principle that they always have set up, is that, for instance, there on Pocahontas Park, there's a children's playground. Volunteers also did the very same thing that we're doing right now, is raising funds to put that in, as well as the dog park or...
So is that what you're planning to do for the county, raise money to build this facility?
Truthfully, no, because it's already in the budget. For the county, though, are you speaking of the county or?
Yeah, I'm inquiring as to why you're raising money for the city of Vero Beach, but we as the county are not being afforded that same opportunity.
Well, I guess part of it is right now, again, we're the only game in town and at Pocahontas Park. And at this particular time, there wasn't anything available coming back in from the county. That's number one. Number two is that the courts at Pocahontas are in sad shape. I mean, to the point where somebody got hurt and we had to close down the court. So I need a place. I have 503 members. I need a place now to have this get accomplished. So during the summertime, I'm going to have these courts sectioned off and the other side is going to be able to play. Where else can I go? I have no other place to go. So to your point, is there something that we can do to raise funds for you? At this particular time, there was nothing available. And it was at this time that staff, when we took a look at your proposal, is why I came up here, because we did see that there was a critical need. And so that's where we're at right now.
If I could speak to that too, a couple things. The city of Vero has been very successful at having these privately funded, parks and recreation improvements, and they've done a great job of that. Maybe we need to do better here. We've had a great relationship with the Soccer Association, who's spent a significant amount of money on those fields, and we've got other partnerships like lacrosse. However, Vero's had the dog park. What's already happened with pickleball and the new improvements, they had privately funded improvements to the Humiston playground, I think, and they had the bricks, and they sold the bricks and all that stuff. And it kind of, I'm kind of troubled by it, though, on one hand, because it seems like people are saying, well, the city can't afford it, so we'll step in and help them out. But the county can afford it, so we don't need to help them out. And my whole thing is, you know, I'm a county person, right? I've worked at the county here for a while, and I see people annex into cities. I hear people move into cities, and they pay a higher tax in the cities because they're getting a higher level of service. But what I keep seeing is people expecting a higher level of service from the county without contributions. So I think maybe we should, try and utilize leverage of local fundraising and local dollars a little bit more than we do. But I just, so a little bit of a rant from Jason, but it's odd to me that we've got people funding municipalities' parks system, and there doesn't seem to be a perceived need to do that with the county. So thank you.
Ma'am, thank you very much. And clearly, you need to stay involved in the process, but I think we're off to a good start. And I think at the end, we'll get there.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
My pleasure. Anybody else from the public wish to speak on this? If not?
Mr. Chair, if I could just clarify one.
Absolutely, please do.
This would come back to you in the CIE in December. So just so that everybody understands, there's no funding available now to start developing and make the improvements. And hearing the commission, hearing the county administrator, we can also take input and see if there's a willingness to meet us halfway along with these developments.
Based on the 5-year plan right now, when would you think you'd be starting construction? Or the final bit of the planning, rather?
Excellent question, Mr. Chair. The actual funding is in the CIE for FY21-22.
Okay, and so this is going to be a little bit of a slow process. And the pickleball people are very active, and they've got a big project going on with the city of Vero Beach right now. I think, and our budget is going to be limited at the time we do construction anyway. I mean, I think if we just let things move at a decent pace, we're going to see a great opportunity. It may be that we, with our budget, can do a limited amount of pickleball courts with limited amenities. And it may be then that the pickleball group wants to step up to do something more in a public-private partnership, basically, just like the soccer fields. But I think right now it might be premature to even work on that and do the details, because they, especially that group, which is a nonprofit group, has a lot on its plate right now. But I think if you, which I'm sure you will, just keep the dialogue open, see what's happening in Vero, and then when it's time for us to go forward, we can see what happens then.
And as I reiterated, I had a little tickle in my throat, but we have 8 courts coming online in Sebastian. And then there's also a possibility of doing blended line courts at the tennis courts that we have now at Dick Bird. So that could provide some relief. So we'll work with the group on that.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So
Mr. Chairman, I'll go ahead and move staff recommendation that we move $50,000 into the 2019-20 CIE for pickleball, site planning, construction, permitting, estimates, et cetera.
Second. Yeah, that's a motion by Commissioner O'Brien, second by Commissioner Flesher. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you very much, gentlemen. At this point, it's a great time for a 10-minute break. So we'll break now and be back in 10. Thank you. I'll reconvene the May 14th meeting of the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County. We are now going to move to utility services, modifications to septic hauler agreement for the residuals dewatering facility. Good morning, Mr. Burke.
Morning, Chair. Thank you. For the record, Vincent Burke, Director of Utility Services. The board may recall a couple of years ago, they implemented the the septic hauler agreement for those folks that do business in Indian River County. Right now, we have 14 haulers that are currently on board to do services to pump out waste generated within Indian River County. And looking at this agreement before, we usually do a renewal in June of every year. We worked with the county's attorney's office to do some minor modifications to the agreement. Most of them are just clerical in nature. I'll just the highlights of the agreement. There's two in the acceptance section. American Express is now accepted, so we removed that note, and the haulers must abide with all of the Indian River County requirements, and we reference the Florida Administrative Code, which outlines some of the requirements for the haulers, as well as the on-site sewage treatment and disposal options with respect to installation, repair, and maintenance. In the disposal procedures section, we modified the portable restroom and stationary holding tank delivery sheet so that we could also try to identify where in the county the material is coming from. Right now, we would just get a lump sum we picked up in Indian River County. It did not give us any detail of where those porta potty restrooms were located at, so we've attached a sample sheet to include as part of the agenda packet that we'd like to have the haulers just fill out. And then a couple other changes are the fact that we wanted to make sure the offloading of the hauled waste are not done under a pumping condition. At the residual dewatering facility, usually we let gravity do the work, but in some cases people are time compressed and they try to speed up the process that can overload our equipment. So we're asking them to apply that at a rate no higher than what we have set at the residual dewatering facility. And lastly, we wanted to just clarify that the violations of the agreements do not just end each and every year, that the term is 1 year for the agreements, but certainly if there's some violations, we wanted to make sure and clarify that those carry out for the life of the time that they're doing work within Indian River County. So there should not be any cost to what the haulers are already doing in conformance with Florida Administrative Code, Department of Health regulations, and what we require. And we just wanted the board to approve the proposed minor clerical modifications. I must say that Heather did a great job in reaching out to all of the haulers so they were aware that we were coming to the board on this date, to also let them know that this was coming. And I don't think that they had any time to take apart from their busy schedule to be here, but if the board approves this today, then we would take this modification, send it out all haulers so that we would get those back and signed to be done effective June 1st of this year. I'm certainly available for any questions the board may have.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Burke?
Move staff recommendation.
We have a motion by Commissioner O'Brien, second by Commissioner Flesher. Anybody from the public wish to speak on this item? Mr. DeBraw?
No.
Okay. Anybody else from the public wish to speak on this item? We have a, yes, ma'am.
I just had a quick question.
No, ma'am. Is that on this item, the dewatering facility?
The septic?
Yes. Then come on up to the podium, please, and give us your name and address. Name and address for the record, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My only question was approximately, and Commissioner Brown had talked about septic to sewer earlier, and whether or not that was in the plan in the next year or so, as far as residences on the beach side that are, let's say, south of 17th Street. I was wondering if we had, because I know that the public will be, contributing funds to that per individual homeowner. I was wondering if there was a approximate date or timeline.
Okay, first, that has nothing to do with this item, so that's one thing. The second is that we have a long-term plan for septic to sewer, but I don't think there's anything scheduled for south of 17th Street for next year. Is that? Yes.
So we do have a plan. We've put together a priority listing of subdivisions that we would go to do septic to sewer, based on the closeness to the lagoon, the soils, the cost, all those types of things. I will point out that the county is not the provider of sewer services on the South Barrier Island. It's the city of Vero. So that would be a city of Vero utility thing in that particular area.
Okay, thank you.
And ma'am, if you can, just for the record, your name, just so that.
Oh, Amy Robinson.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody want to speak on this item before us? There being none, we have the motion by Commissioner O'Brien, second by Commissioner Flesher. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. We now move to county attorney matters. The first one is the county attorney's annual employment agreement.
Thank you very much. My current contract expires on July 1st, 2019. I'm still enjoying my job and would like to renew my contract. Only change to the proposed contract would just be the increased compensation number, which reflects my current salary. County Attorney's Office recommends that the board consider the proposed agreement and decide whether to approve the proposed contract and authorize the chair to sign it. I will note that I just, as I try to do every year, and certainly try to do more than that, is I just want to thank my whole team, Bill and Kate while she was here, Nancy, Sandy, Christina. They're all amazing, and it just really makes my job a lot easier when I have the type of staff that I have.
And I'll just note for the public, since they couldn't have grasped it, that when you talk about increased compensation number, that is essentially the same % increase in your salary that every other county employee is getting. So with that, any other questions?
Chairman, I'll just comment, that Dylan was in charge when we lost Kate, so I'm just saying that.
I'm good with that.
We should get a dock and pay for that.
What do you want to take out of it then?
We should be looking at, reducing this thing, but.
It's hard to monetize the value of losing Kate, so I guess we'll just have to put it in a more subjective manner of, so your task now is to replace somebody with all of Kate's skills.
With that, I'll move to approve the county attorney's employment agreement.
Second.
Motion from Commissioner O'Brien, second by Commissioner Flesher. Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. We did the pretrial services earlier. We moved to request for permission to advertise retail sale of dogs and cats. Mr. Rangel.
Good morning, Commissioner.
I'm sorry, Mr. DeBrawl.
That's quite all right. Bill DeBrawl on behalf of the County Attorney's Office. Commissioners, back in October of last year, Nicole Capobianco made a presentation to the board concerning the retail ban of puppies and kittens banning at retail pet stores. She explained to the board the reasons why that puppy mills and kitten factories, and if I refer to either a puppy mill, I'm during the presentation today, I want to make sure that I'm referring to both, not just one. These facilities are for breeding purposes only, that because of the practice that they're restricted only to breeding, that it can lead to some very questionable conditions at the breeding facility, that the puppies are removed after 8 months and transported all over the United States, leading to further decline in the puppies as far as the challenges that they face, traveling at a very young age, leading to compromised or deceased puppies upon arrival, and after they're sold to the public, that there's also a increased amount of sickness and compromise with the puppies. The board also heard from Doherty, Inc. Doherty, Inc. was the operator of Pets Around the World 2 that operated in the old Cindy's Pet Store at 8th Street and US 1 in Vero Beach. After some lively discussion, the board had a couple of questions as far as the type of breeding, the lawsuits that were being filed, the type of ordinance that might be enacted, and so staff went back and did some research, and there have been some changes that have occurred since back in 2018. First of all, the legislature this year had 2 bills concerning puppies and kittens, that pet stores would be regulated by the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, and that they would be the authority for regulating and rulemaking. One bill went even further and preempted regulation to the state, and even went so far as to nullifying any local ordinances concerning the retail sale of puppies and kittens that would strike those ordinances from the books, much like they did with the prohibition of guns in the parks and on other county properties. The other change is that Pets Around the World 2 has since gone out of business. The building at 8th Street and US 1 is vacant, and to staff's knowledge, there is no further retail sale of puppies or kittens in Indian River County, except at some of the bigger box stores like at Pet Supermarket and Petco. I know that Halo and other approved Humane Society shelter-type rescue organizations will offer their pets for sale as long as you have the pet neutered and get its shots and provide proof of that. They will waive any fees as far as adoption is concerned. So we've gone on as far as doing some investigation as far as the different lawsuits that have been filed both in Florida, mainly in Sarasota, and other parts of the country. Looking at the Florida lawsuit, there were three main issues that were brought up of most importance to the state regulating type of things. The first that I'd like to talk about would be the Commerce Clause. The U.S. Constitution says that we cannot pass any type of legislation that affects commerce among the several states or among states. The claim in the lawsuit that the pet stores make would be that if we would enact an ordinance, it would go ahead and affect commerce if the puppies or kittens are coming from out of state someplace. The other argument would be on a local level, or on a state level, I should say, that it would be violating the Burt-Harris Act. As you know, the Burt-Harris Act says that the board, if it enacts an ordinance that would affect a use of property, that property owner, if they show that the use has been curtailed and it's been a reduction in, and it leads to a reduction in the value of the property, that they are entitled to damages. The third type of claim that is made in the state suits would be the impairment of contract. The Constitution says that we cannot pass an ordinance that would impair an existing contract. Here, the pet stores said that they had existing contracts with breeders not only in the state but also out of state, and that those contracts would be impaired with a ban on the retail sale of puppies and kittens. The reason I bring those up, and also the change, is that since there is no more, or there are no more active pet stores that are selling puppies and kittens at retail, the risk of a lawsuit is greatly reduced, and the strength of that lawsuit is also greatly reduced because there would essentially be a plaintiff that would be very hard to find that would go ahead and challenge us. So we've looked at some different ordinances. We looked at our neighbor to the north, Brevard County. Brevard County had 2 pet stores that were operating with the retail sales. They had, I think, 3 or 4 public hearings with upwards of 35 hours of testimony at those hearings. Staff had actively participated, legal staff had actively participated with the board and came up with a very concise and lengthy ordinance because they were worried about being sued and also worried about the potential damages that may result from the suit. So they were very guarded in their approach to the ban on retail sales of puppies and kittens. Thankfully, we don't have that type of problem here in Indian River County. We looked at the ordinance that came from Seminole County. The ordinance from Seminole County, as included in your backup, is a fit for us as far as our existing code. It does what we want to as far as allowing family and hobby breeders. There was a question that was brought up during the initial discussion of what is a family breeder. A family breeder is essentially kind of a one-time sort of affair. It's not on a repetitive basis, it's almost on an accidental basis that the puppies are then distributed toward or to friends, neighbors, family members, something like that. It's not an ongoing process. I included an article from Florida Trend magazine on what a hobby breeder might be. This was a lady up in Sebastian that breeds the golden retrievers, and on a regular basis, about once a year, they have a litter of puppies from each of their females, and those puppies are either already spoken for in advance or are sold using internet-type advertising. The family breeder or the hobby breeder, I'm sorry, is usually pretty restrictive in where their dogs go. They would not like a golden retriever to go to a one-bedroom, one-bath type of facility unless it was in the middle of like 4 or 5 acres or something, giving the dogs adequate opportunity to exercise. So the hobby breeder can be much more controlled as far as everything. Speaking with Mr. Bowling, as far as would this type of allowance be permitted or violate our existing code concerning commercial and non-commercial kennels, Stan said that we're good as far as the existing ordinance is concerned. So the Seminole County ordinance also puts an outright ban on the retail sale of puppies and kittens. The definitions that would be added to our existing code would include internet sales as far as included in that. It would allow for the continued operation of the rescue and the Halo type folks to sell puppies and kittens at retail as long as they are coming from their facility. And so it's staff's recommendation that we go ahead and advertise for the public hearing using the model of the Seminole County ordinance, cleaning up some of the numbers and definitions, and going forward from there. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
Thank you very much, Mr. DeBrawl. Any questions? Commissioner Fletcher.
So, Counsel, you're saying that there's probably no more fertile time for us to move forward with an opportunity to prevent any furtherance of what had been taking place?
I think this would be a good time to move forward, as I stated. The risk of the lawsuit is greatly reduced. The strength of any potential lawsuit is greatly reduced.
And you feel confident that if we were to move forward to advertise, to begin that process, that we would be able to eliminate the opportunity for the distribution of imperiled animals in the community?
I think that's absolutely correct, yes.
And I appreciate you looking into that Florida trend and bring it to my attention too, because that's not the type of environment that I believe the origins of some of the large creatures that were distributed here through that facility. I don't think that was the environment that they were nurtured in. So, but I appreciate you bringing it up because the place is stellar, very clean, pristine, and it truly is a family-oriented, compassionate place for individuals to find a good partner, a good family member, a good pet.
I have heard very good things coming from people that have purchased the puppies at that location.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know how much conversation will be there, but we...
Won't we that, Commissioner?
One question. The article, thank you for including that. It indicates that the hobby breeder in that particular situation in Sebastian has 2 breeding females and that they produce 1 litter apiece per year. The resolution or the ordinance speaks to hobby breeders as resulting in no more than a total of 1 litter per calendar year per legal residence. So does that need to say per breeding? Because based on the article, that situation wouldn't be in compliance with this ordinance unless I'm misinterpreting it.
No, I think that's one of the things that we would have to harmonize between our existing ordinance, which allows a person to have 3 dogs at their house. I would have to think that, like our code enforcement doesn't go out and strike down lemonade stands, our animal enforcement folks would not wait until the birth of the puppies, see that, well, if the mother gave birth to 6 puppies and there were 2 dogs before, that makes 8, and here's your ticket for the violation of having too many dogs. That would be one of the things that we would do as far as before the public hearing, harmonize our code with the proposed code.
Yeah, I would think it would be pretty simple just to change per legal residence to per something different, but
Correct.
that's the only comment I have.
Thank you. Commissioner Fletcher, do you have anything, Commissioner Brown?
No, I'll wait.
Commissioner Fletcher?
Mr. Chairman, with all that, and with the understanding that the attorney will be harmonizing with our current ordinances, regulations, stipulations, and animal husbandry and control scenarios, and the health, safety, and welfare of the pets in mind, I'd like to move staff recommendation to advertise and go forward with this consideration for ordinance.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Fletcher, second by Commissioner Zork. Commissioner O'Brien.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. When this first came before us, anytime government starts regulating something, it's time for a pause and to make sure what we're doing is appropriate. And I started getting a lot of the calls and emails and documentation from a lot of the folks in the community. I did go speak to the owner of the pet store. I called the USDA inspector for the Southeast, and more and more it started becoming more and more clear that the existing regulations, the USDA inspections, weren't doing the job, that there was still a lot of misuse going on, and that, I think the system is failing us how it exists now. And so, I started becoming more and more pro the banning of the retail sales of the dogs and cats. And I certainly agree now with Mr. DeBrawl that given there's no active business right now, that this is the appropriate time to move this forward. So I'll be voting in support of it and hope that when it comes back, that the board continues to move this forward. I do have a couple, some wording things I've already talked to the county attorney about, and we can work on that as we bring this back. But I think now is the time to do this, and that it does fall on the local government to take care of this, because at the federal and state level, it's just not doing the job. So.
You mean after the job that the Florida Department of Agriculture did on biosolids, you don't trust them to do the right thing with dogs?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. I know you're a big believer in some of the state and federal bureaucracies, but
yeah, very big. If there's nobody else from the commissioners, I'll ask if anybody from the public would like to speak on this item. I mean, you probably know where it's going, but come on up, ma'am, and say a few words if you'd like. Name and address for the record, please. Yes, ma'am, that'd be great.
My name's Nicole Capobianco. I live at 7065 21st Street Southwest in Vero Beach, Florida. I want to thank all of you for everything. It's been a long road, and it's an emotional one for me. But since our last meeting, I had to meet more people that would come to me because they'd find me on social media or the internet, whatever it was, pertaining to this store, and they bought sick animals. And just last week, I actually went to court with a woman that's in the audience that bought a dog at Christmas time that was deathly sick. And so it was to watch this go on for as long as it did, and I didn't know what I know now about these pet stores. I had never bought a dog from a pet store, but I've learned so much, and more than anything, wanted to teach other people about it, and I'm glad that finally everybody's realized that this is not a legitimate business, and he's not only hurting animals, but the people in Indian River County are suffering from it, and I just want to thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to return that thank you because, quite frankly, Ms. Capobianco brought tremendous light on this, and I believe that many of us and the citizens wanted to believe that a pet shop, because that, as we grew, a pet shop was a place where you visited and you met your new puppy, and it was a nice, warm, friendly environment. And we like to see the good in things, but, and I think there was a sense of denial or dismay that such a place could exist where such negative things were being done. So I believe that the delay in the process